Anything that's every day is a significant percentage of your life. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. One of the things I tell people when they're trying to develop a vision for their life or an implementable plan is make a bad plan. Like, make the best one you can, but don't get obsessive about it. It's like, make a plan, implement it. You'll figure out when you implement it why it's stupid, exactly, and then you can fix it a little bit, and then you can fix it a bit more, and then you can fix it a bit more. I don't think that I've ever been in a situation where if something wasn't going right for me and I sat and thought, okay, all right, I'm willing to figure out what I'm doing wrong, which is a big thing to think because you never know how much you're doing wrong. It might be something that you really don't want to contend with. But if you clear some space to meditate on that, the probability that you'll figure out something that you did that was stupid, that's bending you and twisting you in the wind, you'll get an answer very, very rapidly. The answer to how you pay for your past sins isn't by jumping off a bridge. Well, how much do you need to be beat up? Enough so you fix the problem. No more than that. Minimal necessary force. Don't hit anything harder than it needs to be hit. That's a good rule of thumb. Is there something I can do now to atone for what I failed to do in the past? So let's say you go over your past with a fine-tooth comb and you decide you're going to take responsibility for everything that you did that was wrong and everything that you failed to do that you could have done that was right. It's like, does that change the world? It's like, depends on how thoroughly you do it. You might say it changes the world like nothing else possibly can. And I think that that's actually right. And that's also a frightening thought because it means that things would be way better than they are if you weren't so damn useless. There's this unlimited power that's associated with genius, but it's constrained. And that's really what the human spirit is like because it has this aspect of the infinite. When you don't get what you want, then a landscape of questions emerge, and those questions can resonate through different levels of your identity, from the trivial, oh, I told the joke wrong, to the profound, there's nothing desirable about me and I'll be alone for the rest of my life. It's daunting to even consider that. And then there's the discipline and responsibility that necessitates, which is also daunting. It's like, oh my God, the problem's that serious. I'm really going to have to get my act together in order to not contribute to it, much less solve it. And so the problem is terrible. And then the solution is daunting. When I commit to something and make sacrifices, if something's valuable, you'll make sacrifices to attain it. And that discovery of sacrifice, it's one of the primary factors separating human beings from animals, because we discovered that we could let go of something we value in the present and we would gain something we value even more in the future. You got to aim at something. It's like, otherwise your life is meaningless. Well, what should you aim at? Well, I don't know. Well, pick something. Aim at it. As you move toward it, you'll get wiser. Then maybe your aim will change. That's okay. But at least it'll change in an informed way. It's like discipline yourself in one dimension. See what happens. Well, that's exciting. Always take into account the cost of what you're doing now. Right? Because what people tend to think is, well, whatever I'm doing now is risk-free, and here's a bunch of options. It's like, no. Whatever you're doing right now has all sorts of risks. You're just blind to them because you've habituated to them. They've become invisible. You can't wait around to make things better on the assumption that what you're doing already is without risk. So when people come to see me clinically, for example, and maybe I'm helping them figure out what to do with their career. So they say, well, I think I might need to change jobs. It's like, okay, what's stopping you? Well, there's lots of things, right? Well, I have a job. That's something. It offers me some security. My CV isn't up to date. People don't like updating their CVs. It's partly because it's hard, but also because they're not very proud of it. So then updating your CV turns into sort of updating your life, and that's a complicated thing. And then maybe you don't like being interviewed, because most people don't, and maybe you don't like being judged. And maybe you don't like the fact that if you look for another job, there'll be 50 rejections for every one acceptance. It's like there's a whole plethora of terrible things you have to encounter if you want to change jobs. So you think, well, I'm not going to do that. The risk is too high. It's like, fair enough. What's the risk of doing what you're doing? And that's easy. You don't like it?
Guaranteed suffering.
Yeah. Well, and accelerating suffering. Because let's say you're 35 now and you don't change your job. Well, you'll be 40 so fast you can't even believe it. It'll just happen. Like, it'll take 5 years, but it happens overnight in the same way. And if you haven't changed, then you'll be the same except worse. So that's the alternative. if you don't find what you're doing sufficiently productive or responsible or meaningful or engaging or all of that. It's like, well, there's a big risk in changing it. It's like, yeah, there is.